Welcome to Back to the Frame Rate, part of the Western Media Podcast Network. Back to the Frame Rate, where we watch and discuss films on VOD and streaming platforms for your entertainment. I am your host, Nathan Schur, and with me are Sam Cole, Brianna Butterworth. I put extra Buttersworth in there. I'll probably do that from time to time. And back with us, guesting tonight, is Mark Krawczyk. Thank you for joining us again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me back. I didn't have to sneak through the back door this time, so I feel good.
Mark, remember when we reviewed 65? Remember the good old days when we reviewed 65, the greatest film of the year? Sarcasm.
I see that ad on VOD, and it brings back flashbacks to that film, and not good ones. So
I had an option to watch it on an airplane, and I just scrolled past it. I was like, no.
Well, I will say that it is an excellent day for a podcast because, Sam, what are we watching? What are we discussing today?
Well, today we are discussing what is considered one of the scariest and most effective horror films of all time, 1973's The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin. And it was the screenplay was written by William Peter Blatty, and it was actually based on the 1971 novel of the same name. This film came out at the end of 1973, was a big commercial success, had scenes that shocked audiences back then, and it actually, I did not know this, was the first horror film, I believe, to be nominated for Best Picture. Yep. This is arguably William Friedkin's best film, and it remains effective to this day. And I'll be honest, I have not seen every single William Friedkin film, so I think I'll restate that by saying this is probably his most famous, most known work. Even though that movie with Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro is right up there with it. Just kidding. The Hunted. But I actually don't hate that movie like others do. But yes, The Exorcist, we are kicking off the Halloween season with one of the greats, what is considered one of the best horror films there is.
Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world. The world of darkness. Nobody expected it.
All right, let's see what
Nobody believed it. And nothing could stop it.
There are no experts. You probably know as much about possession as most priests. Look, your daughter doesn't say she's a demon. She says she's the devil himself.
All right. So someone's got to open up the discussion here with their thoughts on this. And Mark, just so you know, we're not holding back on spoilers here. It's an open discussion, but I would like somebody to open up with their initial thoughts on this. Who would like to begin?
Don't all jump at once.
Sam, I'm going to throw you in there. Sam, please go for it.
Gotcha. The movie is very, very fresh in my memory. I just had the pleasure of watching it last night, and I will say, as an overview nutshell review, what I love about this movie is the opening scene in northern Iraq gives it this broad canvas feeling of, oh my God, we're going to uncover something dark and this is going to be an adventure. I think in terms of the effectiveness and the horror, I find it pretty scary. I must say, for me, as a person in 2023, looking back at a sort of a 1973 film, some scenes to me are not shocking in the way they would have been to audiences back then. And I actually find some scenes early on kind of overwrought, where the girl starts screaming. And I think, it's just kind of like it suddenly goes from 0 to 100, and it just achieves this high pitch, and I feel that in some moments it loses some suspense. However, I must say, the exorcism itself, the last 15 minutes of this film, I think are like cinematic perfection. And I actually, and not even joking, when I see filmmaking that I think is so good, I'm so moved by the quality of the filmmaking, I actually tear up a little bit. And I was tearing up in this scene, which you might think is a strange reaction because, obviously you're supposed to be horrified and gripped, but I was tearing up because I find it such a compelling battle between good and evil. And the movie takes it so seriously, and that the climax just hammers it home. And I think that the movie just ends spectacularly. I would also like to point out, I actually watched the original 1973 theatrical version last night. There's a 2000 extended version, which I saw in the theater. I remember that as well. I was being a slight cheapskate because I watched it on Vudu. I don't own it. And I could rent the theatrical version, whereas the extended cut I had to buy. So that was just me cheaping out a little bit.
I'm glad you brought that up because as we all talk about this, I like everyone that mentioned like which version they watched, or I mean, Mark, you probably are familiar with both of them. I'm just saying which.
Yep, I've got this one. I watched this one literally just before the show here, and then
which one is that?
Original.
Oh, you watched the director's
the version you've never seen. It's 10 minutes longer.
That's the one that I watched this week as well.
Interestingly,
go ahead, Sam.
Sorry to interrupt. No, I was just going to say, interestingly enough, Roger Ebert actually, I read a review. He prefers the theatrical cut, and he feels that some of the additions are sort of hit or miss. The theatrical cut actually ends with the priest who's still alive just kind of staring down at the stairs, where apparently the extended cut ends with him and the detective walking down the street talking about movies that they like. Yeah. And Roger Ebert was like, what the hell was the point of that? But I can't comment because I haven't seen that version since 2000. But I was impressed. And I like one thing, I'm ripping off Roger Ebert here, but I think this is a really good thing to say about the movie, is that the movie, it's very character based. We learn about the priest and his, his sick mother, and it's very kind of grounded. And so the horror seeps in very slowly at first, and it's not sensational. And I actually think that helps make the picture scarier because you just have people living their lives. And I also find it interesting that the mother is an actress in movies. There's a kind of interesting commentary about a movie within a movie. And I almost see that as a clever device to make you feel less safe because the characters are they're making a movie and the movie is lighthearted and there's the Hollywood world, but the film is telling you subliminally what you're watching is not a movie. This is real life. And in the real world, there is a demonic presence that's about to invade her daughter. So I thought it was clever because her career could have been anything. She could have been working at an office, but I thought it was an interesting choice that she was an actress in a movie. I thought that was must have been conscious on William Friedkin's part, unless that was in the novel, but which I haven't read. But I liked that choice. Yeah.
I haven't read the novel either, so I don't know. I'm assuming that she was an actress in the novel. I cannot say. I don't know if anyone here has read it, but I think it plays in. It would be an important part of who the mom is. Chris is in this movie because she's somebody that she's. I wouldn't say she's pampered, but she's got her staff. She's an important person. She's got people that want her autograph. I mean, and now the tables are completely turned on her in the situation where she is desperate. And I think it makes her fall that much more important. I mean, I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but if she was just a regular person, I think, I don't know but I think it's significant that she's an actress, somebody of some stature, I guess, or celebrity. I don't know.
That was interesting because I actually warmed up to her character, but when she's first introduced and she's complaining that there's rats, and then her assistant's like, there's no rats in there. She comes across in that first scene that I'd forgotten as kind of
Mm.
like a little kind of like a jerk. And I was like, oh, I thought we're supposed
Yeah.
to introduce this character and empathize with her. And then you start empathizing with her immediately through her and the daughter. I just thought it was an interesting way to first show her as kind of tired, surrounded by staff in the kitchen. I was like, oh, this is a unique way to bring this character to life here.
Yeah. All right. How about B? Would you like to give us some thoughts on The Exorcist?
Yeah, this movie rips, still rips, so good. I thought so. I've seen The Exorcist a bunch of times. I haven't revisited it in years until today. I watched it this afternoon, and it's so much more insidious than I remember. Like, I think I remember it as being the like shock and gore horror movie, and it being really about Linda Blair and her character. And this time around, I watched it and I was like, oh my God, this is really the portrait of a woman in a spiral, and Ellen Burstyn is killing this role. I thought it really followed in like this great American tradition of like Cassavetes and, you know, Baby Jane, and just these like these women who are just suffering and can't get institutional help. Like, they just can't get institutional help. And yeah, it was pretty interesting, that family dynamic. I thought it added a whole new level of horror.
Definitely. Yeah.
I really liked Jason Miller's performance a lot. I noticed and correct me if I'm wrong, he's the priest who
Father
takes on the
Harris.
possession at the end and then he dies. I really liked his performance because you can feel like he feels like he has the weight of the world on his shoulders throughout the movie. And I just love the way when he first starts interacting with the daughter, because he's, you know, trying to figure out if she's possessed. When they're, you know, when he starts looking at her, you realize he's trying to be professional and get through the exorcism, but he's got this look on his face like, I can't believe what's happening right now. For some reason, his performance really stood out to me on this viewing. I thought,
Sam, you didn't like him because he looked like a boxer? That's
oh no, I liked his performance a lot. I thought he was amazing. Yeah, I was impressed with the scene where he goes to the hospital and his mother is dying. I just liked, I thought he did a great job at kind of being like burdened by the whole situation. I was impressed with the performance.
Yeah.
Plus, he's got a face like a bruised penny. Watch it all day. Can't do anything.
Great.
It would have been very different if he was played by Sylvester Stallone. He'd be like, look, you know, there's a ghost here. It's not a ghost, it's a demon. Ghost, demon, I don't care. Get out of my house.
The power of Christ compels you. No, that was Sly Stallone. There you go. Sly Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger as the young priest and old priest.
Yeah, he'd be like, Jesus is awesome. You gotta follow Christ. Yeah, he'll get you out of this.
The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying that the power of Christ compels you. Adrian, where are you at? No.
Mark, what? Tell us your thoughts, please.
I love The Exorcist. I don't think it's the scariest film ever made, but what I will say, but that's because I saw it not in 1973, because I was yet a twinkle in my father's eye. I wasn't born till 75. So, but I can imagine what the audience experienced first seeing this, because you didn't really get horror like this to that point. And even if there was anything even remotely similar, it was
nothing like this.
It was in the B movie genre angle, you know, something shocking or whatnot that only, you know, you went to the grindhouse to see. So basically, for wide audiences, for mainstream audiences, I can see where this film was extraordinarily shocking and scary for folks, because they had not been exposed to something like this, to dare say Psycho, you know, that type of level, to where it actually affected your mainstream audience. Now, I consume horror every day, just about. So, you know, for a horror consumer, you watch this, it's effective. You're right. The last 15 minutes is very effective. And so many possession films have borrowed and copied and tried to grasp the same, they still follow the same formula pretty much that The Exorcist has set up, and you haven't really broken that mold too much. You had was it the Pope's Exorcist that came out recently, that I was watching it and going, man, this is like The Exorcist Light. I mean, like, I'm like sitting here going, this is really trying, but not, and they tried to do something a little different. But for the 73 Exorcist, there's great performances in here. It is bringing this type of more extreme horror to the mainstream audiences. But what hits me more now, looking at it, revisiting it now, is not the horror with the Regan stuff. I mean, that stuff, yeah, Regan. I'm a parent, so I could relate, the whole metaphor or whatever you want to call it, with a parent feeling helpless when your kid is sick, especially mentally.
Yeah.
What got me more was the subversive commentary on big pharma in this, and the commentary about how doctors treat specifically female patients in this. They didn't come out and say hysterical, but let me tell you, it was implied that they were just saying, oh, she just has hysterics. Reagan has hysterics. We could do it with this.
It's her nerves. Just take the pills. It's her nerves. This movie is a commentary on what it was like to be a woman.
It is. It is. It is definitely making a statement about how the medical profession treats women, even still till today. And I've seen it firsthand, how they approach it today versus what's actually might be the cause of the issues, and how they treat it. And especially being a kid of the 80s, when they mentioned prescribing Ritalin immediately for the hyperactivity,
who wasn't on Ritalin in the 80s?
I wasn't, but I knew my cousin. I knew someone who was.
If you weren't, somebody who was. And,
right.
Yeah.
Hyperactive, and that's how they treated it. Was, oh, well, let's just here's some Ritalin. Oh, here's some Prozac. Here's some, it's like, that's not what's going on, and so for me, watching it this time from that perspective, I thought the horror was even more in how the medical community was trying to just pass this off because it's something they couldn't figure out. So their final draw was just to commit her. I think that's more scary than anything that goes on, in all honesty, at the end of this film, even though that is disturbing, because all the doctors were like, they wanted to get this done because they couldn't figure it out. So let's just commit her rather than actually figuring out what's going on, And I think for me,
and you have a lot of,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just
you have a lot of practical effects that are like amazing in here, but medical practical effects too, right? It's not just like her scarring and the puke and the dummy with the head turning. It's the like big MRI machine.
Oh, that
like this medical horror.
The cerebral angiography scene was by far the most horrific thing in this movie for me.
So
by far. And what I was reading is that's the stuff that actually people were fainting at in the audience back in the 70s. Not the makeup of Reagan and the head spinning and all that stuff. It's those medical experiments that she was subjected to in this movie. That's the stuff that's because that stuff is the stuff that makes you throw up when you see like that blood squirting across her chest and all that. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
It's funny, for some reason, what terrifies me the most in the films, in this film, in terms of feeling like pure terror, is there are two moments. There's one where she does the first head turn, but it's not all the way around. She just goes, and the way it just, I go like this. And then there's another moment towards the end where it's during the exorcism, and they're literally power of Christ, and they're working on her, and they're trying to get the demon out. And there's this one shot that's zooming in on her looking at them, and she's just got these evil eyes, and she's doing this thing with her tongue going like, and for some reason, the first 180-degree head turn and that moment absolutely terrifies me. Interestingly enough, the movie overall, I think, is very effective and scary. For me, there are other movies, for me personally, that scare me more. And the only way I can describe it is that I have a home in southern Massachusetts in the woods. For me, James Wan's The Conjuring is a movie that I
Mm.
could watch in the middle of the night, but when it ends and I just hear the house ticking and I've got this creepy feeling, whereas The Exorcist, I find it very effective and scary. But when the movie ends, I think about it. But I mean, I watched this right before going to sleep last night and I was totally fine.
Well,
And that's saying nothing bad against the film. There's some movies that have that just scare me more personally.
I want to springboard off that. I haven't gotten to my thoughts on this yet, but we've all seen movies that I think are scarier that even deal with like the devil and exorcisms. But I think what this film does is for me, um, it rarely goes into the lives of the people and how it affects them. And I think that's what makes this movie really special is that we've spent so much time with these characters, with Reagan, with her mom, with Father Karras. And this movie is, I think, immaculately paced, getting to spending time with these characters. And then when we get to these horrific moments, we're invested in these characters. A movie today, when we see these movies, say they're not doing this. We're right in the horror immediately. And that's what I love about this film is that we see how the horror is affecting their lives and how it's destroying their lives, which seems really unique in a horror film. I don't even really think of this as a horror film. This is almost like it's almost like a theological horror like exploration. It's more horror seems
Like a
secondary in a lot of
psychological
ways
thriller.
with horrific moments in it, but it's really just here to there's I haven't really gotten to my thoughts, which let me jump on that now because we're getting ahead of ourselves. But we're gonna get to that in a moment. But I've seen this movie. This is the third time I've ever seen this film. Each time has been a completely different experience. I saw this in my teens, and it scared the crap out of me. Then maybe I was 16 or 17. And I saw it as a pure horror film then. And I remember I was drained afterwards. I saw it again in my 20s, and I think it was to lesser effect. But seeing this now with much more mature eyes, I can honestly say I found all the iconic imagery and sequences that this film is so famous for, the projectile vomit, the head spinning, the grotesque moments, to not be scary or shocking at all to me. I
agree.
What I have grown to appreciate about this film is just the masterful storytelling that's taking place here. This movie is, yes, trying to shock audiences with those horrific moments, but like I said, I think this film is dealing with really the mystery of faith, and that's what I think is the underlying objective of this film.
Well, there's also parallelism to mental illness. I mean, is really what it's addressing. I mean, even though you're dealing theologically, there's another angle you can look at it with. How do people in the medical profession and everything deal with mental illness, which it strikes very much home with me for personal reasons with some family members. So having that firsthand experience, watching it again, it definitely, a lot of the possession films, yes, they're about faith too and what you believe in, and demonic possessions, what's true evil, human nature, all of that could be addressed. But there's also, in a lot of these possession films, especially here, I think that's just addressing mental illness, especially in a child, and how that takes a toll on everybody around them, especially the parent who feels helpless because it's not something that you can just fix with a band-aid or something, and not getting explanations of what's wrong, which has happened especially with kids who have problems. We've got better medical stuff now, but in 73 they didn't know what ADHD was. They didn't know what autism was barely, not even like what and so you could see people who have those conditions back then being classified as possessed and trying to be discarded, and I think there's also that theme in here, as well as dealing with faith through your through the Father Karras.
No, I agree. I think that's a great point. I don't know what else, but basically, I think that the scenes showing Reagan's descent are are unbelievably disturbing. I think these scenes where we see Ellen Bernstein, she shines in these moments where we see her, where she's the mom clearly doing anything, trying to do anything for her daughter to get to the root of what's going on. I think all these scenes intercut with Father Karras, who's the priest losing his faith, tormented with guilt because he's unable to properly take care of his mom is wonderful. Lots of mom themes here. So my point being, I think
That's
this
horror in general.
yeah.
I've got mommy issues. Like,
I just love that this film takes its time, allows room to create the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is doing the heavy lifting. It's not the horrific scenes for this movie; it's the atmosphere. Because
but to be clear, the horrific scenes rule. They are still
they do. But like I was saying, it wasn't the same effectiveness for me watching it. I was actually nervous about watching this last week by myself at night, which I knew I was going to have to. I'd never seen this movie by myself before. It affected me that way in the past, but this last week was like, I took it well. I took it well. This is not so bad, but I was able to enjoy it on a level that I never had before and really appreciate the storytelling going on here. And I think it also helps that this film is so grounded in reality too. Even though the house I know is on a soundstage, I love that so much of this movie is taking place around Georgetown, and we get to really live in this real space.
In Iraq. They filmed on
Yeah.
I just love there's so many movies in the 70s that just have this great like pacing to them, and so many films are so pumped up and amped today with music and sound effects and CGI that it's just so refreshing to watch this movie and let the scenes play out and the atmosphere exude all over the place and all the character moments. And I even love the party scene at her house, where like I know it's the director, the writer is like way too drunk and he's like calling that guy a Nazi, and it's just like was like just allowed time for that. I actually had a quick question for you, a plot related question, and this is something I've always wondered if I missed something or if it's supposed to be vague like that. But I always got the sense that Max von Sydow and Iraq they're at a dig site and they kind of dig up this evil presence, and there's the statue there. But I'm wondering how this demon somehow goes to Washington and possesses this specific girl. And I know that's like kind of secondary, but I always thought it was kind of just kept vague on purpose, and it's up to you to just kind of imagine. But I'm wondering if there's actually something specific as to why it was her that got affected that I missed, because I didn't notice anything there. Yeah.
I think that's the point, is that it is arbitrary.
Yeah. That's what it
they're
seemed
actually
like.
they're actually in the director's cut. And if you haven't seen the director's cut, there is, I think, a scene that is pivotal that I wish was in the theatrical cut. There's a conversation that takes place between Max von Sydow and who's the actor that plays Father Karras, where he asked why this girl.
Yep.
And I remember this. I actually quoted this here. And Marin answers what I think is the entire point of the movie. It's not about the girl. I'm quoting this here. The point is to make us despair, to see ourselves as animal and ugly, to reject the possibility that God could love us.
Interesting.
And I think and the reason why I think that was taken, the studio wanted William Friedkin to take that scene out. And ultimately Friedkin, he agreed to take it out. He regrets it now, which is why he puts it back in the director's cut. But the point is that he took it out because the whole movie is basically saying that. But I think it distills it down what the whole movie is about, that it is, he chose this girl because why not? It's an innocent girl that he could do this to. There is no point. It's not like there's this little talisman or something that just somehow made its way to Georgetown. There's no connective tissue. It is arbitrary, and it's intentionally arbitrary. And it could happen to anybody, anywhere, anytime, and that makes it even scarier in a lot of ways.
I like that because it lets your imagination like fill in the blank. Oh, I'm sorry. And that's what I thought too. I just wasn't sure that I had personally missed something. So I'm glad that you confirmed that. Anyway, B, sorry, continue. My bad.
No, I think that's great. I think it's interesting that Marin is the one that keeps finding the devil. Like he was the person in Iraq. He was called into Africa and it took him years. He's gotten called into Georgetown. And I think the movie is responding to the like post counterculture, Leave It to Beaver. Like maybe our socioeconomic safety nets don't exist. And I think that's a really interesting parallel to today. And if we're talking about like the crisis of faith, the person who's like that consistent and relies on their faith is also tested consistently throughout the film. And that's his safety net.
That is brilliant. There's a line in the movie that I just, when the priest says to Max von Sydow towards the end, he's like, well, I've worked it out. I think there are 3 different personalities in her. And Max von Sydow's response is chilling. He's like, there's only one. And I heard that and I was like, that was good.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you look at his character, his Father Marin, because he before he was in Iraq, he was the one that was doing he did the one Exorcist in Africa before he went to Iraq.
Yep.
Which makes, which while they don't say it, it's his driving force for being in Iraq, because he's in there and he finds the one talisman and he sees the demon image, which will come into play later in the other films. But a little bit of teaser, but foreshadowing. It's almost as if he was searching for the origin of it, to find it, and having the fact that it just picks this random girl makes you realize, well, there isn't necessarily one specific source for it. While he does find one, or he fights another evil, there's more than one, evil floating about. It could be anybody. And I think that's where they're trying to build up some of that fear, and that evil can reside in anyone at any time.
And we see different faiths deconstructed. Like we see the Catholic faith put to the test, but we also see faith in your economic status and society and like the system put to the test. And we see faith in the medical system put to the test.
Even the police, even the law enforcement. She doesn't like what the cop is implying a number of times, especially after the director's death. He's like,
what a scene.
He's implying something that we all know what he's trying to imply, but he doesn't actually come out and say it. And I think that scene there between those two is one of the things that really sticks with you when you watch this film, even more so than the, FB Jesus and all that. Yeah. But what gets you is those moments, those performances where it's just those two characters and they both know what he's trying to say. And she's like, yeah, you're full of crap. And he's like, well, I might not be,
and can I have your autograph?
Yeah.
I love that scene. Yeah.
That look on her face when he says, I'll take that second cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Like
well,
what?
Well, what I liked about that whole scene too is you can see it in her performance, which
so
is just
good.
She's
that's
so
the
good.
scene, that's the scene of the movie. That is the scene that is the performance of the movie from Ellen right there.
Yeah, because he mentions it, and you can see her deny it, but also the way she plays it, there's just this little voice, at the back of her head going, "Would he? No. Would he? No." And she's fighting it every time the cop brings it up. And
her faith is doubted.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I love it that he knows something is up, but he's so polite and kind about it. But he's on to the situation, and you're like, oof, this is so good. I like it. I love it when in films, if there's a detective or a character like that, when they're smart, and he clearly is a good detective, because I've seen too many movies where the detective is kind of like an idiot that sort of like, fine. And you're like, come on. He was actually ahead of me as an audience member figuring it out. I'm like, oh my God, she's the one that pushed him out the window. Oh my God. That was great. Yeah.
It's like Columbo.
Oh, I love Columbo.
Yes. Definitely a Columbo reference there. Yeah.
Definitely a Columbo. One more question, if you don't mind.
You know what? We brought up the sound in this movie before, but I did. What's funny? You think about this movie, the little I wouldn't say score for this. You think you recall this, but I was surprised in that there's so little of a score for this movie. But I love what they do. They fill that space with sound. And this film rightfully, I think, won Best Sound Mixing at the 74 Academy Awards. You got, the rats in the attic, you have those medical procedures, things like the phone ringing loudly and all those jarring sounds.
The bed shaking.
I just couldn't believe how,
oh no, sorry. I was just gonna say in the sound when it's like she's struggling and there's the demon within her, so there'll be two voices at once, like you're just like, oh, creepy. Sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up the sound mixing and the sound design of this was unbelievable because I never really thought about it prior to this viewing. It was incredible. But that it's the sound in that's really is in place of that score that really is not in this movie at all.
No, but it comes up at the proper times, and it's a wonderful score. Although if you listen to the entire track, which you don't really get in the movie, but you get on the album or whatnot, it is so 70s because you've got that part with the do, 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 and it's just creepy, kind of like Jaws or kind of like the Halloween theme. I mean, it's
definitely
Halloween. It reminded me a lot of
really
Halloween.
sounded like Halloween. Yeah,
there's a moment where Chris is walking back to the apartment and she passes by some kids in costume. Like, did John Carpenter just get the idea for Halloween from that moment right there?
Well, I mean, that's the first time you actually hear pretty much any music is her coming back from the set. That's when the theme kicks in. But you don't get the whole thing because if you listen to the whole thing, at one point a 70s guitar comes in and goes, and it like throws the whole thing off.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they don't have that in here. But the music is kind of used somewhat like Jaws and this is why I always love telling people, go back before the year 2000 or 1980 and watch some classic horror films because you will see tools used by big name directors who have refined those tools, but they were influenced either subconsciously or consciously by these early horror films. I mean, if you watch Eddie Hitchcock, look at how many famous directors borrow from Hitchcock, borrow from this film, even the horror, when they realized what you could do with little. Because this film, if you look at the budget, a lot of it goes on effects, but that's about it. A lot of it is in the sound design. A lot of it is in the performances. You're on location, which sure, that eats their budget a bit. But as far as for actual horror elements like gore, there really isn't a lot. There's a lot of other disgusting things going on, but gore, it's not actually a gory film. It's a disgusting, slimy film. Yes,
and disturbing.
A sleazy film, disturbing. But as far as like actual,
I say this movie is wet.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of bodily fluids and it's a wet film. I like that.
I would even say that like modern horror films, better modern horror films today, are some of them are good because they're going back to that less is more style of you see a lot of movies that they go for the they have a low budget and they go for the less is more, and less is more is always incredibly effective, especially in horror. I mean, a film like The Blair Witch has nothing to do with this movie, but I found it scary because I was just imagining in my mind what I would be seeing. And so I just love that style. And this movie is so refreshing. When I watch this film, it just like gives me faith in filmmaking done well. It's like, you don't have to have a mega budget for everything. And these days there'll be like a $400 million movie with like poor CGI and like a big like fish flying around. And you're like, where did the money go?
I'm looking
here?
at you,
like,
lamb. No, I agree. The scariest stuff is the stuff you can't see, right? The scariest stuff is what's hiding.
The old school sound design stuff, that's the way to go for real creepy stuff, because if you use, especially haunted house stuff, if you use stuff that's the stuff that creeps me out more than your jump scares. I get so tired when a film relies solely on jump scares to scare you.
Yeah, because if it's all jump scares, you start to just get irritated because you just feel kind of like, come come on, stop.
What-
You know,
what-
like
whereas you get the stuff that's out of the corner of your eye. You get the sounds, but you don't see where the sound is coming from. Like you get that
Yeah.
wonderful scene when they come in the door when they actually have the priest, and you can hear Reagan upstairs and the howling and everything just kind of in the background a little bit at first while they're talking before they enter, and then it gets really loud. That part's a hell of a lot more creepy than build up music. Oh, boo, cat.
I have issues with the use of negative space in framing, where you just know something's there, but like
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times nothing is there, but it's that 10th time where something is going to be there.
One of the most effective things, the Insidious franchise, the last film. Oh my God! Don't get me
I'm
started.
in the middle of those. I'm
No,
actually
no.
watching. I rewatched the first
Okay.
3 of them in the last week.
I
They're
like
so
the,
good.
They're so good at that. Yeah.
I like the 2 movies with Lin Shaye, which are 3 and 4. I really love Lin Shaye anyway, so I love that they explored that part, and I loved the first one. But where I got effective by the first one isn't the jump scares. It's like the scene where you've got the demon guy behind him, like you saw in the trailer. You know, the stuff out of the corner of your eye, the stuff in the background, the stuff that's there, but it's not really moving, but it's watching you. That type of stuff creeps me out. For me, The Shining
terrifies me. Oh, The Shining terrifies me more so than this
Me
movie.
too.
Actually, yeah.
Me too. The Shining is probably for me the scariest film for me still to this day. When they did the anniversary showing, my friend and I went to go see it on the big screen, and she chuckled as I squirmed. Still, 47-year-old guy squirming in his chair when the red rum part comes on. When that kid's saying red rum, forget it. Forget it.
Yeah.
I am squirming and going, is this over yet? Is this over yet?
It's so funny because you guys talk about negative space. I have to give a quick shout out to a not so good horror film, but it has one moment in it that really plays with that. It's from 1986's Poltergeist 2. And, you know, there's a lot of movies where negative space, Nathan, like you're saying, where it's like you think something's coming. This is one scene. There is no setup. It takes you totally by surprise. The kids are in the bathroom, and they're just, you know, having an argument over toothpaste. He's like, oh, come on. There's no setup. There's no indication of anything. And the kid moves out of the shot, and the mirror, instead of the mirror being there, it is replaced by a window looking into all these like skull faces, and they just stare at you at a second, and it comes out of nowhere, and you're like, oh my God, but it's perfect. And then the rest of the movie, but you know, it's fun. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I think we've had a wonderful discussion about The Exorcist, and we can close the book on this. But before we do...
Something in this field could be releasing the chemical into the air when there's too many of us together. Don't eyeball me, boy. I see your mother driving up and down the street looking at me. I'll be your stepfather by the week.
It's a bad time, Bob.
I'm serious. If I leave now, I'm not coming back.
You ever hear the expression, you got a face only a mother can love?
Let's just stay ahead of the wind.
So we have a new segment on our show, Mark, if you're not familiar. It's called Wahlberg on Wahlberg, where we have to recast somebody from The Exorcist with Mark Wahlberg, and why? And is it to the movie's detriment or to its benefit?
Okay,
You know,
I'll
I
go
gotta
first.
say, you go first.
Go B. I want to hear what B has.
I would recast Marin as Mark Wahlberg. I would do that. And it would absolutely be to the movie's benefit. I think it's insulting that you'd even suggest it could be to the movie's detriment.
Would he have the
You're
pep?
welcome.
Would you give him the white hair still? Would he still have like dyed white hair?
Would he be aged up?
No, I want Mark Wahlberg exactly as he is. Here in Iraq, finding talismans, then in Washington, D.C. and Georgetown, just absolutely railing against his God, trying to save Linda Blair.
It would be funny if Mark Wahlberg was just a random worker in northern
he is
Iraq,
Catholic and religious, you know.
or he just happens
Everybody
to
in
be at the big.
Boston's Catholic. That's not impressive.
But imagine if Mark Wahlberg was just if he was a random digger in northern Iraq, and he's the one that digs up the talisman, and it's a close up of his face, and he's like, "What the f- is this?" And that's it. That's his cameo. I gotta say though, honestly, oddly enough, I feel Mark Wahlberg. I know the detective is an older role, but like Mark Wahlberg, I honestly think if he was the detective, I don't think he would I think he could do a pretty good job. Strangely, there's some roles where I could actually see him in this movie, like, which is interesting. Like he would not. It'd be odd casting, but I think he could do it.
You
Sam,
took
I like that you're
mine.
like, hot take, this actor can act.
Oh,
you took mine, Sam. you took mine, Sam. I was gonna say the detective, but he'd have to do his Boston accent too. He'd have to like just be the cop from Boston who he's in Georgetown. He'd be just that.
We could move this to BC.
Yeah, exactly. He just have that thick accent. No explanation why. He just have that accent as a cop.
Right, exactly. Thick Boston accent. Yeah.
So I guess that if you say the detective, I mean, the other easy pick. No, I won't go with that. I'll just say cast him as the director.
Yeah.
as the drunk director. I want to see him calling.
He'd be good
I want to
as
see
the
him
drunk scene. Yeah.
See him accuse the butler as a Nazi. Just.
It's like, I know you were playing golf with Goebbels. I know that. Don't you walk away from me. It's like I think
I
do a
will,
good job. Yeah.
all right, I will. I'm recasting the actor Barton Heyman, who plays Dr. Klein.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nothing against Barton Heyman here. I think he's doing adequate work. Everyone else in this movie is killing it, though. And I found the character of Dr. Klein to be someone I just wanted to punch.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because when I was growing up, I was constantly misdiagnosed at a similar age as Reagan. And he reminded me of an amalgamation of doctors that me and my mom dealt with. And I would like to think that Mark would undergo extensive preparation for his role, such as studying medical procedures, terminology, observing real doctors at work to accurately capture the role's nuances. His physical fitness, I think, would add a unique dimension to the character. I would just like to see it.
Yeah.
I can see that. Sure.
That's the thing. Mark Wahlberg can like actually fit into this movie. That's what I'm realizing.
Yeah.
It's like there's roles that he would do well. I think. Yeah.
I'm now kind of dying to hear him say the power of Christ compels you.
The power of Christ compels you.
The power of Christ compels you. Come on, get the F out. God.
Wait, are you not listening to me? I said it compels you.
He's like, you have to meet up with my best friend. His name is Jesus, and you should know him. You jerk.
That moment where Karis is like stunned into silence, and Marin is like, hello.
Yeah.
The response. Karen, the response, like that would be so funny.
Or you could have Alan Aldo would not work well as Max von Sydow. He'd be like, you're funny. You should mention. I was in the desert, and there was a talisman there that looks like the one that's in your attic. I know I'm crossing a line here, but I think your daughter might have a problem.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Our Wahlberg on Wahlberg segment is derailing. But let's move on to our recommendation shelf.
Sir.
What?
Are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Well, have you heard anything about either one of them?
I find it's best to stay out of other people's affairs.
You mean you haven't heard anybody say anything about either one of these?
Nope.
Well, what about these two?
Oh, they suck.
All right. Our recommendation shelf segment this week is, it's a little different. We're doing our 1973 movie Slumber Party. And what we're doing is basically we are all going to bring a title from a movie released in 1973. It could be from any genre. And we are just going to decide what order we would watch this in, because we're all going to come over to my house in our pajamas and get a big bucket of popcorn and decide what order we're going to watch these in, and from 8 o'clock at night till sunrise. Sound like a good time?
Sounds rockin' radical.
Yeah. Because what are we gonna do? Like recommend like 4 weeks worth of possession films, right? All right. I can't wait for this. This should be a lot of fun. So Sam, I like to throw you in under the bus first.
So a 1973 movie that I like a lot, and there are honestly a lot of good movies to choose from 1973, and this is a lesser, not as well known one, but White Lightning, starring Burt Reynolds. I highly, highly enjoy this movie. Is directed by Joseph Sargent, written by William W. Norton. It stars Burt Reynolds, Jennifer Billingsley, Ned Beatty, Bo Hopkins, R.G. Armstrong, and Diane Ladd, and it actually marks Laura Dern's film debut, which I thought was really interesting. This is just a total action adventure comedy. Ned Beatty is a corrupt cop that drowns Burt Reynolds' brother, and he gets out of jail. And what's hilarious is Burt Reynolds is released from jail because he's supposed to work with the FBI and spy on the corrupt sheriff of the town and do all this subtle, helpful work for them and the government. He does none of that. He just gets in a bunch of car chases, pisses off the sheriff, eventually kills him in the most hilarious death in all of cinema. And it's just a highly entertaining movie. And I must say, as a Burt Reynolds fan, I'm really oversimplifying this, but there are two different segments to Burt Reynolds' career. There's pre-Smokey and the Bandit and post-Smokey and the Bandit. After Smokey and the Bandit, he becomes mustache Burt Reynolds and becomes lighter-hearted and sillier. But I like early Deliverance, White Lightning, raw, younger Burt Reynolds, who's a tougher dude. And he is in full form in this film. And I actually just learned this today. I could not believe this. Steven Spielberg was actually supposed to direct this film and started on pre-production, apparently backed out of it, and he chose to do the Sugarland Express instead. And I was fascinated by that because I had no idea that he was even involved with it. So White Lightning, it's a lot of fun. Ned Beatty and Burt Reynolds, who just the previous year in 1972 were in Deliverance, are reunited in this film playing different characters. This movie just appeals to my hillbilly side, just fast cars and just mayhem and obnoxious violence. And there is a hilarious line in the movie that has not aged well at all, where Burt Reynolds is essentially a moonshiner, and these hippies are walking past him, and he's like, stupid hippies with their marijuana and stuff like that. He's like, the only thing we do is drink beer. And I was like, that's a dated line, but this movie is not for everyone. I just saw it and I love it, and I love the soundtrack, and no surprise, Quentin Tarantino loves it as well. I'm sure it's not a stretch for you to understand why, but White Lightning, 1973, check it out. Watch that one. Do not watch the sequel, Gator, directed by Burt Reynolds as he plays Gator McCluskey. The sequel, just know the first one's gritty. The sequel is inept, in my opinion. Watch White Lightning, Burt Reynolds as Gator McCluskey. Yeah.
All right.
Wow, Gator. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I actually have always wanted to see this. I haven't seen either of the Gator films. I'll call
they
it.
are fun. They are fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, what's your pick?
Oh, Mark.
Oh, I was gonna say B could go. If it's B's is what she sent me, I'd rather hear hers, because mine is. I have two different ones. It all depends on when your parents go to bed. So since this is a slumber party, it's going to depend on when your parents go to bed, because
we're all adults. So
okay. Oh, okay. If we're all adults, then
speak for yourself. Sorry.
well, there's two different ones, but I want to hear B's pick first.
Okay, B, you go ahead.
Sure. So my pick is Lady Snowblood, which is just a rip-roaring good time tale of vengeance. It is, as the name implies, a very bloody film. The general gist of the movie is that a woman was captured, tortured, abused, and has coerced the prison guards into conceiving a child with the sole purpose of killing everyone in sight as payback for her torture. It's super fun. And if you are a person who maybe hasn't been exposed to a lot of foreign films and you are a big American cinema nerd and you really like people like Quentin Tarantino, then maybe you should watch a movie like this. Because I think he's going to come up a lot with the recommendation shelf. But this Kill Bill is a pretty one-to-one of Lady Snowblood, and I think Lady Snowblood does it with a lot more nuance and frankly fun. The costuming is awesome. The pacing is great. I can't say enough good things about it. Go watch it. I think it's on Max and Criterion.
Wasn't Lucy Liu's character influenced by that film?
Yeah.
I think.
Well, the whole movie was.
Well, the whole movie,
her
right?
costuming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her costuming, and also yeah. Well, we'll get it. More Tarantino to come. It's my least favorite sentence I've ever said. Just...
Sorry.
Right.
Well, it depends on if you don't mind risque films, or if you like sci-fi. So
It's Mark. It's whatever you like.
All right, fine. I'm going to say it. Invasion of the Bee Girls. There you go. 1973. Script written by Nicholas Meyer. But when he went to visit his parents, the producers grabbed the script and rewrote it, so much so that Meyer wanted his name off of the film, but he was convinced by his manager he needed credits. And we all know that if you know Star Trek, you know Nicholas Meyer.
I love Nicholas Meyer. Yeah.
The guy who saved Star Trek, basically. Okay.
Incredible director, yeah.
So Invasion of the Bee Girls is about a group of women who are it's influenced by the scare of the Africanized wasps or bees that were around. But anyway, there's a cosmic force that turns Earth women into queen bees who end up killing men by sex. Okay, so there you go. And they start to convert more and more women as they build this hive of sorts of bee women to go. This
movie sounds horny as hell.
It is. It made the list. I forgot what site it was that said you only watch it for the nudity. It's one of those exploitation B films. If it checks all the boxes, okay, it checks all the boxes for when you think of grindhouse B sleaze exploitation film. It checks all those boxes, but at the same time, especially you watch it through you can just laugh because it is one of those just films that is just, it's so cheesy and over the top, and you just look at this going, wow, it's one of those, definitely you would see a late night movie, midnight movie, somebody owns a theater and happened to get a copy and show it, if you had a videotape of it, maybe, because it is 73, so just started with the videotapes, maybe, but not until probably 80s before you actually see it. But no, it's not a great film by any means. But if you're a B horror fan or just a B fan, no pun intended, no pun intended.
Hey.
It's one that you can put on your list and just you pop popcorn, you throw it in, you'd have it at a slumber part, sleep over your buddies. The parents went to bed and you snuck it on TV, so that was one of my picks. The other one was a lot safer, but still fun. So, but yeah,
it definitely sounds bizarre.
It is. It is. It is bizarre. The girl, the women, when they become bees, their eyes go completely black, right?
Oh,
and
man.
it just, and the way they dispatch the men as well, and way they turn them into bee, it's just, yeah, you're just watching it going, what is this movie? But at the same time, you can't help but enjoy the camp and the old school, exploitation factor. If you're a fan of those films, that's one got to be on your list.
Nice.
So
Amazing, Mike. I
Now
love
that
what I love what you bring to the show.
Now that I've brought the quality and the class of this show completely down to zero, there you go.
No, it's great. Yeah, I might be submitting the most mainstream movie of the bunch here. Actually, my pick is Enter the Dragon. Which was directed by Robert Krause. And I say this movie has it all. It's part spy film, part action film, part blaxploitation film, but ultimately it's a badass martial arts film starring Bruce Lee, Jim Kelly, and honestly, I think the MVP of this movie is John Saxon.
Yeah,
John Saxon. Who, I mean, Bruce Lee is Bruce Lee, and he's great. But John Saxon is acting his ass off in this movie and kicking ass. This film has spectacular fight scenes. The look of this film is delicious. It's the colors are vivid and gorgeous. It takes place on this tropical island. And I'm not going to get into the details of the plot, but ultimately, several characters are brought together on this island for this martial arts tournament. There's some wonderful side characters, including like Bolo Young. American audiences probably know him from 88's Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, a movie that is probably heavily influenced from this film. This would be Bruce Lee's final film before he passed away, and actually was released shortly after his death. It solidified him as a martial arts legend. I love this film, and it's just a romp. It's such a good time, and that's my pick.
It's a wonderful martial arts film that set the formula for martial arts films and video games for decades to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. My Tarantino tieback is that Bruce Lee's jumpsuit inspired Uma Thurman's jumpsuit.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
We actually just covered The Big Boss on our podcast, which came just prior to Enter the Dragon, actually. By a couple of years, I think it was that was the first film where he was like on the marquee. It was Bruce Lee. And that film is wild too. If you've ever watched it, it's guys in an ice house fight. It's crazy. It's
Criterion has a great Bruce Lee set.
Oh, really?
Nice.
People are looking.
I might have to look at that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So, this is important. Let's do this quickly. What order should we watch these movies in? So this is key. Because I it's hard for me to pull all-nighter these days, but the be able to stay awake to watch these movies is important. I would, because for me, I'm gonna start off with White Lightning, because I want to start off with something kind of fun that's going to really get the juices flowing in the beginning. I love Burt Reynolds, and I think I want to start off with a Burt Reynolds movie to start my night.
I hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how I want to start my night. I'm going to follow it up with Lady Snowblood. I haven't seen that one, and because I feel like I want my full attention for that movie, because that's a new one for me. Enter the Dragon. I think we'll be starting that around 1 a.m, and that will be a good time to start that. And at 3 a.m, when I really need a kick in the ass, we're gonna throw an Invasion of the B-Girls, because I don't think it needs my full attention to enjoy it. But if there's some nudity, I'll be like, oh, okay, here we're going still here.
There's creative kills and nudity, so yeah.
So that's the movie I need
to be
keep
tipsy
going.
for. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my order.
That's a good order.
That is a good order.
Anyone else want to have an order they want to put this in?
No, I kind of think you nailed it.
Yeah, I
did nail it. Yeah.
Okay, done. I might have to do this next weekend.
That's your playlist. Yeah, right.
That's my playlist. All right, nailed it. First try.
Nailed it.
All right, let's move on to our next segment. We're moving along here well. Our movie musings, where each of us it's not mandatory, but if anybody wants to just mention what they have been watching over the past week, any highlights, and it could be things that we watched or things that we want to watch or just kind of throw out there. This is the moment to do it before we wrap up the show this week.
I was just
Anybody
going to
wanna?
jump in briefly and say it's not a movie, but on Disney Plus, I've actually been watching Ahsoka, the Star Wars
Yeah.
show, and I'm on episode 4 now, and I have to say I'm actually really excited to see the rest of it because I got to be honest, I found the first episode incredibly slow and kind of dull, and I was like, man, this Star Wars, this is like putting me to sleep. I'm a little worried about this, and then the plot kicked in and I was like, wait a minute. This is the most creative, interesting Star Wars story that I have seen in a while. Now I'm riveted. And I actually just watched episode 4 the other night and I felt the feeling of that I haven't felt in a while from Star Wars, of being a kid with this like sense of wonder. And I was like, oh my God, like this is actually really on the money, to the point where I was like, wait a minute. Is Star Wars like course correcting and getting awesome again? Because all of a sudden I was like, wow, like I was really surprised and impressed. I'm going to watch episode 5 tonight, possibly 6. I can't wait. So I recommend the show, and just be willing to get past a slow burn. It's certainly not bad in the beginning, but it took a while to get moving. And now I am riveted. I was not expecting that. I can't believe how awesome this show is. So I'm kind of excited. Yeah, and that's it for me. But yeah.
Oh wait, you're in for such a treat with episode 5 and 6.
Oh, I can't wait. Awesome.
I'm glad to hear that, because I need a tip on something here. I have twice tried to get through Mandalorian season 3, and I have not been able to do it.
You're not alone. You're not alone. Mandalorian's, you can walk away. Mandalorian season 3, you can walk away. It's not awful, but I was not a fan of Mandalorian season 3. Season 2 blew me away. 3 is just it hurts. Yeah. And it's okay. It's not terrible, but I feel your pain with that. Yeah.
I've been doing all these shows in order, but like I haven't started Ahsoka because like I gotta finish Mando. So, but it's a grind.
It's not.
Well,
I hear you. It's not awful. It's just not. It's just like autopilot or something. I was disappointed. Yeah.
If you haven't seen it yet, before you watch Ahsoka, even though there's 4 seasons of it, I liked Clone Wars. I loved Rebels. The 4 seasons of Rebels,
never gonna happen.
No, you're not gonna watch it. It's
I've seen a few episodes
Wars.
and I liked it. And Clone Wars even surprised me at how there's something. It's imperative with Star Wars for they have to get the creative action right, and I don't quite know how to explain it, but Ahsoka episode 4, when they're like, without saying it away, when they land in this forest, I was just like, like I was transported. There was wonder in my eyes. I could not believe. I was back, and I was like, this is what I like about Star Wars, and I haven't felt this for a while. I felt it in Mandalorian season 2. Yeah.
Okay. Ahsoka is like the 5th season of Rebels. Rebels has probably the best Obi-Wan moment that we've seen post original trilogy. Seriously, there's an episode in Rebels involving Obi-Wan that episode is better than the entire season of Obi-Wan.
And the vision
I
of the
highly
story,
recommend Rebels.
I will watch Rebels, and I'll just say that the vision and the story that is unfolding in Ahsoka, there's so much more care in that than the sequel trilogy with like Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. To me, it just got very muddled story wise, and I was like, this is great. So I feel hopeful for Star Wars' future, and it actually makes me excited for whatever the first film that comes out, Christmas 2025, but like count me in, I'm on board. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I will make the move to the next show. All right. B, anything you want to offer up?
I went to go see A Haunting in Venice.
Yes.
It was a good time at the movies.
Oh, yes.
It was a good time.
I'm so glad to hear that.
It's my first. Yeah, it was my first crack at the Branagh Christie installments. I haven't seen the other 2 for no reason other than I haven't seen them. It's not on principle. But this was great. It reminded me, not in substance or style, but it sort of felt like Confess Fletch to me, the John Hamm remake, in which I was like, just do one of these a year. Just pump out good enough movies that get me to the theater. Like, they're consistent, they're fun, I can bring people to them, they're a nice time. I thought it was great. Yeah.
If you like Haunted in Venice, you'll like the other two, though. My wife and I love them. My wife doesn't go to many movies, but there's certain movies that she'll go see in the theater. A lot of them she can wait for. But the Kenneth Branagh Poirot, because she's a huge fan. She's got the box set, the actual box set with all the BBC shows on it and everything,
fun.
the Blu-ray. So she just loves it, and we love these shows, even though we're the youngest audience members most of the time in these movies. Both the Death of the Nile and the Murder on the Orient Express, we were the youngest couple in the audience.
Oh my
and
gosh.
this one, we were almost the youngest couple in the audience for A Haunting in Venice. But they're classy films. You're absolutely right. They're not breaking ground. Yes, they follow a murder mystery formula, but they're so classy and just well crafted that
they're just well done. Like,
Yeah.
they're just, like, I don't need an inventive chocolate chip cookie. I just need something
Yeah.
super yummy. And like, that's sort of the sweet spot that these movies hit for me. It's just
They're a
kind of
pleasure to
spending time at
watch.
the
Yeah.
theater.
And I have not seen the third
Yeah.
one. I've seen the first two, and they're just classy is a good word. They're a pleasure to watch. They're well made. They're likable, and you're entertained, and they're fun. They're a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah,
many?
and I
How
would
many?
literally give my left arm to be in a seance with Michelle Yeoh. So,
Yeah, right?
sounds cool.
How many books did Agatha Christie write that feature the character that Kenneth Branagh is playing in this?
My unscientific guess is like 1 million.
Because there's only been so many movies. I mean, there was several of these movies made in the 70s or 60s or so. So I don't know if there's a endless supply of stories.
There's
I don't know.
33.
Fun fact about me, your good friend B, is I've never read a single book, so I can tell you.
33 novels are made with Poirot, and the BBC had adapted most of those in its TV show with their 1 hour specials, or they did TV movies. In fact, they adapted the story that A Haunting in Venice is loosely based on, and I learned all this from my wife just recently. The movie that it's based off of is based off of it's more like a novella that Agatha Christie wrote called Halloween Night. And the BBC did adapt that, and it's really different than the movie, but both are really good in their own right. Though the BBC is definitely, it's a TV movie budget. That's what they had. BBC has limited budget, but it's still that story, and both are really solid. And yeah, they're fun.
Okay.
Definitely fun.
Mark, anything you want to highlight that you watched or want to watch?
Well, she took what I was going to say, A Haunting in Venice, which is fine. No, it's fine.
We talked about it. Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. Oh man, what have I been watching recently? Oh, mine is a show as well. It's mentioned Ahsoka, which is really good, is what I've been watching. It's actually a show I watched. I just binged the first season. You've got to kind of be into anime, but One Piece is actually a lot of fun. It's on Netflix. It's an adaptation of the anime that has had over 1,000 episodes. It's still going. That show is still going. And Netflix did a live action of it. And I sat down and like, okay, I'll watch the first episode. And I ended up binging it over the course of the weekend. It's one of those where I like, well, okay, fine. I've got to watch this one now, and so I had to watch them. Watch them all. And my son actually sat down and watched them with me as well, because he likes anime. And the live action adaptation, it's crazy, it's wild, but they do well with it. I liked Cowboy Bebop adaptation that they did too. I was very sad that they canceled it after one season. I think that was a mistake, because I thought they really did well with that one too. And so it's good to hear that this has got a second season, because it's a lot of fun. They're cinematic. They got a huge budget for the show. It's like, if you like kind of a weird variation of Pirates of the Caribbean of sorts, that's what this is. I mean, it's got some child spirit to it. There's a little more maturity to it as well, but the characters are a lot of fun, and it's worth it. I think it's worth it. So
Cool.
Right. Okay. I'll try to, I saw a few things. I'll try to do these really quick, but I do want to say that I saw um, a 1957 film directed by Stanley Kubrick, one of my favorites of all time, Paths of Glory. I've seen this a couple times. This is a very powerful anti-war film that takes place during World War One, starring Kirk Douglas. He's a French colonel who is ordered to lead his men to charge on a German position. The attack goes horribly wrong, and the film deals with the fallout of the events. Some of the men didn't leave the trenches or retreated, and they're being tried for cowardice. It's a scathing look at the hypocrisy and absurdity of war. It's one of Kirk Douglas's best performances, and it's a very underrated film from Kubrick. It's available right now on Prime. I think it's on Criterion, Tubi, Canopy. It's all over the place. No excuses not to catch up with this classic. It's one of my all-time favorites. I also was in the mood to watch some wheat blowing in the wind, so I put on 1978's Days of Heaven from Terrence Malick.
Oh,
I haven't seen this in ages. It's not a film you really watch; you just kind of absorb it. It just kind of washes over you. It stars Richard Gere, Brooke Adams, and Sam Shepard. It's another film that's actually kind of set around World War One, but here we're focused on a group of people that are working for a wealthy farmer who's played by Sam Shepard. There's this weird love triangle that develops that involves the three leads that I really didn't find that compelling in it. But what I did find wonderful is just how Days of Heaven is just captured by the cinematographer, Nestor Almendros. I think this is how you say his name. The imagery is just evocative. It's ethereal. It's creating this sensory experience that is unlike most films. I think the same can be said for 1973's Badlands, a film I like quite a bit more. But it was nice seeing this. I got to see this on. I haven't seen this on Blu-ray. I had an old DVD of this for a while, but I took this out of the library and I got to see it with the special edition version of this, which was really cool. So that's on. You can watch on Canopy and on Paramount Plus. So these are two films I watched. Oh, I also saw last night because I'm a masochist on Prime Video. For some reason, I was in the mood for a Denzel Washington film, and I was in the mood for Ricochet. But Ricochet is not available anywhere.
Oh.
Ricochet is not available. So I watched Virtuosity. Which is not a good movie, but I saw it in the 90s. I'm like, I wonder if Virtuosity holds up.
No.
It does
it
not.
does have Denzel Washington in it. So
it does have Denzel Washington in it. This is, by the way, I didn't realize this. This is directed by Brett Leonard, who also did The Lawnmower Man.
Yes.
That movie is nuts. Yeah. The Lawnmower Man is whack. Yeah.
I never made the connection. This was the same director. But if you wanted a cyber thriller in the 90s, there was one director to go to. Yeah, this movie is not good, but it does have a pretty much batshit crazy performance from Russell Crowe.
Yep.
That is all I can really say about it. But it's
you can get that anywhere else.
You could watch Unhinged and get that.
Yeah, but you got Russell Crowe and Denzel in it. So I mean that there's a reason why people watch Johnny Mnemonic. It's not for the story. It's because people like Keanu Reeves. That's why they watch Johnny Mnemonic.
I just watched that last week and I was so disappointed in it.
Did you watch the black and white version or the color? Because according to the director, the black and white version is the better way and the more intended way to watch Johnny Mnemonic.
I didn't know that.
Great question. I don't care.
I knew I could be when I saw when he was talking about black and white versus color. I saw your eyes roll, and you're like, "Nope, it's not going to help. Don't like the movie." Yeah.
It was, I don't know how you First of all, 90s tech movies. I love when they're just like, we gotta get the control out to the GPS, and it's got a zip file. Like that's hilarious, and it had zero camp. Come on.
Oh, hey, I work in IT in my day job. I've done IT work for 25 years. Let me tell you, watching hackers is is one of the most entertaining yet painful things to watch, because you go, that's not how any of that works.
I will say
At
quickly
having a good
that
time.
best most dated line about technology is in 1992's Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. And the villain is like, Zelensky, we have all the files on your shrinking project. And he's like, we have the capacity to store 65 gigabytes. And I was like, whoa, 65 gigabytes. Whoa, shit.
At least that one like technically makes sense in a sentence. A lot
yeah, exactly.
The coherent thought. Damn.
All right.
You had a week.
Did we cover everybody? I think so.
I think we so.
All right.
Yeah.
Last announcement I'll make before we wrap it up. We have a newsletter that went out today. Our first newsletter called Frame Rate Monthly, which is pretty cool. And if you are not receiving it, you can sign up. You can email us at backtotheframerate@gmail.com. And basically it is going to be something that we put out every month, which is pretty exciting. You can get links to past episodes, stories about what we're going to be talking about in upcoming shows. So it's pretty cool. We hope to expand on it down the road, but yeah, that's pretty cool news. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So there we go. That's a show. Thank you, Mark, once again for gracing us with your presence. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun talking to you folks. I love movies, and getting to talk and share it with other people who love movies. That's why I love doing this so much.
Yeah,
so
we appreciate you. Thank you. All right. Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. You can email us directly at backtotheframerate@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at backtotheframerate. You can find past episodes of the show and other podcasts from the Weston Media Podcast Network on our website, and I'll drop the link in the show notes. And of course, the best way of helping us out is to share our episodes on your social media feeds. Spread the word. Thank you. That is it. The show is over. Goodbye.
I want you to know it's over.